Right, my only credentials for being an actual football manager are years of experience on Football Manager. But other than that, I have absolutely none. But regardless, call me Will Stills because I think I've fixed Newcastle's problem. I'm also ginger too, so the resemblance is uncanny. We might be playing City at the weekend and he's just been sacked because he couldn't quite make it work at Southampton, but it doesn't matter. I've fixed the problem. Now, before we get into it all, before we get into the many problems that there are at the moment and what I think is the solution, I really want to quickly thank everyone for sticking with me whilst I've been a bit crap with my uploads. I've explained in my last few videos, I've been traveling around Thailand, but I'm still in Thailand, but I'm now settled in Bangkok. I'm settled in an apartment here for over a month now, so I should be able to be a bit more consistent with uploads and a bit more on the ball. So I just want to thank everyone who has stuck around, and I really do appreciate that. And on my last video as well, I did say for my members that I'm going to explain a bit more about that. So if you do want to hear more about that, I'm actually going to be filming that video just after I finish this one. So there will be a bit of an explanation of what I've been doing and all that kind of stuff if you are interested in that. And obviously sign up to the channel membership for less than the price of a coffee. And there is going to be a big channel update that I'm also going to be kind of letting everyone know about on the channel memberships for something that's going to be coming to the channel hopefully very soon. But yeah, the main point is thanks everyone for sticking around whilst I've been lifing, traveling and stuff. Now that I'm more settled down in one place, I can be a bit more consistent, which brings me on to another giveaway. So I'm going to do another giveaway for the pink shirt that I got before. It has been a while since I explained about the pink shirt, so I kind of need to give a bit of context on the pink shirt giveaway and for any of you that have forgotten or any of you that are new to the channel. So I'll quickly cover that and then we'll get into the reason that you're here, the problems and the solution to the problems. So as usual, as always on the channel, it's a giveaway for score prediction and first goal scorer, and it needs to be as a reply to the pinned comment. Only replies to the pinned comment are accepted as entries to the giveaway. It is for a size large pink Newcastle shirt, exactly like this one. This is also a size large. It's not this one. This one is mine. I actually just spilled a bit of Biscoff ice cream sundae on before I started filming. So yeah, don't worry. It's not this one that I'm making a mess of. It's a brand new one from JD Sports. I think it was after the Fulham game. I walked past JD Sports on Northumberland Street just before I left for Thailand. And there've been loads of people on the channel commenting on every video that I ever wore this one on, saying, you know, where can I get one from? As I said, I walked into JD Sports on Northumberland Street and there was like 3 left, and the most sort of like mid-range size that was available left was a large, so I bought that to be able to give as a giveaway for you guys on the channel. So yeah, just a reminder, that's why there's only a size large available. But yeah, if you want to enter that, let me know your prediction for Newcastle versus Man City this weekend, score prediction and first goal scorer as a reply to the pinned comment. Just quickly, there are some thoughts on the Manchester City game and what my sort of thoughts around it are towards the end of the video. So stick around for that if you want to kind of hear my thoughts in the lead up to the Manchester City game. Now let's get into the video. So at the moment, there are a number of problems at Newcastle, and Adam Cleary did a really good job in explaining in his last video, I think it was, or he might have done another video by now, I don't know, but in a recent video on ACFC's channel, he did a really good job of explaining the problems at Newcastle. So I'm not going to go majorly into depth as to what them problems are. I'll just link his video in the description if you haven't seen it already. I think most of you probably have. But he essentially explained how Tino and Hall coming back would largely fix a lot of the problems at Newcastle because they offer ways to break out of the press with width. He essentially explained how at the moment we're playing obviously Trippier and Dan Burn. Neither of them really offer much in terms of breaking out of a press. So the way that we can only ever really break out of a press is by trying to play it through the center to Tonali or Bruno. But that's obviously really predictable when everyone knows that's what we're doing, and it's kind of, you're only ever really then using the center of the pitch. You're not really able to then stretch the pitch. So like there's, yeah, that was the main explanation of the problem. There was also a brief bit on how sort of Woltemade doesn't really fit the team, which kind of plays a little bit into Craig Hope's narrative that he's been talking about, which I disagree with, and I'm going to explain a bit more on that. But I do sort of see the argument to a certain extent of how he doesn't fit the team, but I can't put it in a way where it's Woltemade's fault in any way, because Woltemade is incredible. He really, really is. Like, we have one hell of a player on our hands, and to make it work with him, I really don't think he's going to be that hard. And then once it does click, which I inevitably think it will, to have then been in a position where we were like questioning Woltemade, I think we would just look kind of stupid in hindsight. So yeah, I think Woltemade's class. I do sort of see some of the slight sort of changes that maybe need to be made to get the best out of his game. But then again, the whole sort of point of this video is I think I fixed the problem. I'm going to explain what I think is the slightly unorthodox way of going around fixing the problem, getting the best out of Woltemade, getting the best out of Tino and Hall when they come back in. And then also in Adam Cleary's video, he did mention the drop-off in form of Joelinton and how Eddie is sort of trying to change the way that he's playing and going from less of like intensity as our identity and more to kind of like controlling games, possession kind of football. So like less high press, more passing the ball around and just controlling possession, less getting injuries from outrunning opponents, more preserving players like well-being, trying to avoid as many injuries from running as much. So the first thing I want to talk about obviously Tino and Hall both coming back. As exciting as it is for them two to be coming back, and they will make a massive difference in terms of progressing out from the back, breaking out of presses, being able to progress the ball up the field, stretch the play. Like they will make a massive difference just in terms of like us getting back to where we ideally need to be. However, having said that, I went back through all of our fixtures since they've both been at the club together, and bear in mind that is from 2023 up until now, going into like pretty close to going into 2026, and they have played, starting at left back and right back, a combined 27 games together. Bearing in mind in that time we've had a Champions League season, we've gone to a cup final, so there's been plenty of extra fixtures. Like we've had some very busy fixture schedules, and then obviously we're currently in another Champions League campaign. Now there are many reasons as to why they haven't started together as much as you'd have maybe thought. Obviously Lewis Hall's injury, Tino's had a couple injuries, Lewis Hall wasn't trusted for a long time under Eddie Howe, and you know there's always been the kind of criticism labelled at Eddie Howe that he has his favourites and has stuck with Dan Burn a lot of the time at left back over Lewis Hall. Regardless of that, I think how important they could be to the future of our club in the fact that they're already two of our best players anyway, so regardless of their age. But then if you obviously take into account the age and how, as I say, important they could be for the future of our club, you would think that they would be playing more because they're already at the level where they are the best players that we have in them positions. So ideally, really, you'd have them two both starting as much as, you know, like Bruno and Tonali do, so that they can create a kind of like incredible partnership where they're both, you know, just like a staple in the team. And obviously, as I said, there's a number of reasons for that. You got your injuries, you got Eddie Howe's favourites, you got whatever else. But I think that part of the reason for that is because they both really like to push on. And obviously, I was just mentioning how that's great for us, and it is great for us. But also, the problem that we then have is if we have two fullbacks pushing on, we have two midfielders in Tonali and Bruno, who their best assets really are attacking. They're both capable defensively, they both track back, they both work hard, they both get stuck in the tackles. If you look at Tonali's best strengths, and it's kind of hard with Tonali to pick out a best strength because he's incredible at everything, but like you have to say that the best things are in controlling and dictating the game. And obviously with Bruno, he's quite creative, he's really good at winning fouls high up the pitch, shoring players in, finding that killer pass. So both of their games, although they are quite well balanced, you would say that their best abilities are probably further up the pitch a bit. Then obviously we have Joelinton, who provides a physical presence, but he's not really any kind of like out and out defender. He does a good job at times, but I wouldn't say I look at him as like proper protection for the defense. He's more just a battering ram. So the problem we then have is we have this kind of flat midfield three that all contribute very well defensively, but none of them are really like there to be protection for the defense. And then if we have two fullbacks pushing on as well, we have kind of like, you're essentially just leaving Botman and Chow or Burn and Chow or whoever you have as your back two, you're essentially leaving that back two with no real protection whatsoever. You also find, because of the shape of that midfield three, they're either defending and they're too far away from Woltemade when they pick up the ball, when they do get it, or they're attacking, as I said, and then when they do lose the ball in transition, you've got no protection for the defense because it is just this flat midfield three shape. So this is why I think the solution to the problem and the way to kind of create what Eddie Howe is trying to create, where we're sort of becoming this more like possession-based team that control games more and aren't having to run teams down. This is why I think the solution is a bit unorthodox in a sense that I don't think many people have kind of put this sort of suggestion forward. Although over the last few days, I have seen a few links to a few players in which one of them would be exactly the type of player I'm talking about. And the type of player I'm sort of talking about is kind of like a Rodri, a Sergio Busquets kind of style player. As I sort of alluded to earlier when I was explaining things, the type of player who sits in front of the defense and just offers protection for the defense, but also helps to dictate the play. Because I think once you do that, you go from having this flat midfield three, you then allow Tonali and Bruno to push further up the pitch whilst this player stays back and offers protection. So you now have not a flat midfield three, so you can sort of play triangles as such. You've then created a scenario where there isn't that disconnect between Woltemade and the midfield, or the midfield and the defence, depending on which sort of stage of play we're in. You've also created a situation where Lewis Hall and Tino can kind of bomb on as much as they want, because there is then protection offered for the defence, so you're not just then leaving two at the back. Also, the other really good thing that that creates is because Lewis Hall and Tino can bomb on, it means that your wingers, so you're like your Anthony Gordon, your Elanga, your Jacob Murphy, your Harvey Barnes, they then don't have to create the width in the attack, because that's now been created by Lewis Hall and Tino. So now you have this position where they can cut inside, which is exactly what they need to be doing, because that's exactly what Woltemade's game is. Woltemade's game is he will pick up the ball deep, and as soon as he picks up the ball deep, you need Gordon, you need Elanga, you need Jacob Murphy, you need them cutting inside, running inside the opposition fullbacks, and not having to worry about trying to offer the width on the outside of the fullbacks, because that's where Lewis Hall and Tino are going to create them overlapping runs, so that Gordon, whoever, can cut inside and start to finally put the pressure on the opposition defence because of the runs in behind, because that's what we've been missing. We've been missing the runs in behind, because since obviously Isak's gone to Liverpool, he created a lot of the runs in behind, and Woltemade picking up the ball deep, he's coming in, picking the ball up deep, but then no one's having the runs in behind. We've seen a few from Jacob Murphy, and it's worked well when he's done them, but outside of that, there hasn't been anywhere near enough of them runs in behind. But then, as I said, you put Lewis Hall, you put Tino out wide, that kind of gives free rein for the wingers to just focus purely on, as soon as Woltemade gets the ball, cut inside, run in behind. As I said, they then don't have to worry about creating the width in the attack anymore. And the really good thing with this is that obviously it's Joe Linton that's going to come out of the midfield. I'm not saying that's the good thing. Like, I absolutely love Joe Linton, but obviously his form has dropped off, and it would be him that comes out of the midfield to then, as I say, allow Tonali and Bruno to press on. But the good thing is that doesn't then make Joe Linton redundant as a player, because obviously we're all very aware that this season it has been very much about managing minutes and trying to, you know, manage things like injuries and manage players like fatigue levels and all that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of fixtures, so there is going to be a need for the rotation. Also, there's been a long time a need for a plan A, a plan B, and even a plan C. And what bringing in this kind of like Rodri style, Sergio Busquets style player. Obviously, let me know in the comments if you've got any suggestions of players who you think would fit this role perfectly, because obviously it's not going to be Rodri or Sergio Busquets. But the good thing about this kind of player coming in is that then our plan A would be kind of what Eddie Howe wants in this kind of like possession controlling kind of game. But then if we need to, we can then switch to the plan B, which is more of a Wissa up top, Joe Linton in the midfield, and we try and outrun teams. You know, if we're in like a cup final, or if we're away at Anfield or something like that, we can then go into that game like, right, we're gonna just one game, we're just gonna go ahead and do what we did before, where we would just absolutely outrun teams to the point where, honestly, when we do that to our best ability, we could genuinely beat anyone in the world. And we would then have that available as a plan B, as I said, with Joe Linton coming in the midfield, with Wissa up top. It's going to be less about like Woltemade's hold-up play, link-up play, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be less about that kind of defensive midfielder protecting the defence and allowing kind of passing play to go throughout the team and build-up play. It's going to be less about that. It's going to be more about Joe Linton battering people and running into people, and Wissa relentlessly making good runs in behind and kind of playing as we did last season. And you know how we played against like Arsenal in the semi-final, Liverpool in the final. Like, that would be then our plan B. And then obviously with the squad depth that we have, when Wissa comes back, we then also have the potential for a plan C as well, where we can have Woltemade with Wissa running off him, or we can drop Woltemade, we can put Jacob Ramsey in there. Like, we then have so many kind of systems that we can use, as I say, a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. So then we have a setup for, you know, the majority of the season where we just want to be kind of controlling games, potentially sort of coasting through games a bit to protect players. We then have, as I said, the kind of high intensity is our identity kind of setup that has been pretty much the only plan the whole time, but we now have that as like kind of like a backup for like, right, we need to go out and win this game. We need to win this game. And then we also have the plan C, which is, as I said, the last one, which is more for your kind of teams where they're in a low block, we aren't managing to find a way through. So then we're like, right, you know, we drop the sort of defensive midfielder, or maybe one of like Bruno and Tonali, and we just go all out attack, where we have, like, as I said, we have Jacob Ramsey or Woltemade in the 10, and then Wissa running off him. So that's more, you know, for your low blocks where you're playing someone who is, you know, lower down the table in the kind of like relegation spots, and they are just going to spend the entire game in a low block trying to just hold on for dear life. And that has been our sort of kryptonite for a while now, and hopefully sort of going forward we then also have a solution for that as well. So like, yeah, for me, the solution in terms of creating the system that Eddie Howe wants, it's that kind of defensive midfielder. And again, let me know in the comments if you have a suggestion for who that player is. Obviously, there was some links about a player that came up the other day, a player that sort of fits this mold, Alexander Stankovic from Inter Milan. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions as to who you think that player should be if we are to go down that route and go after a defensive midfielder in January. I don't think it's all doom and gloom until January as well. Like, I think that obviously Lewis, Hall and Tino coming back, like they're due back anytime soon. And I think that alone is going to make a huge difference in itself. But to really kick on to that next level, for me, I think it's a defensive midfielder we need to sign. But speaking of before January, we have Man City this weekend, and that is a game that ordinarily I would kind of always go into a Man City game thinking anything would be great, because we generally don't ever do particularly great against Man City. However, the way things are looking at the moment, things are looking very much like the Newcastle of old. The Newcastle that we will go to West Ham, we will go to Brentford, and we will lose. And then we will play against Manchester City, a game that everyone will expect us to lose, and we'll go and get a result. It feels very much like that kind of game. The type of game where we've had some time to kind of really work on the problems that we've had over the international break. But then also we've got some players coming back. Lewis Hall is going to be at left back, and I went into great depth on my last video about how Dan Burn being at left back was a massive problem. Obviously Adam Cleary went into massive depths over his video about how Dan Burn and Trippier being as the fullbacks is a massive problem. So at least one side of that definitely being back, and almost definitely what he should be starting. I think he's starting. So that's gonna make a massive difference. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna go out and say that we're gonna beat Man City, because the form that we've been on and the way that Haaland's scoring goals at the moment, like, I'd be a bit mental to come on here and confidently say that we're gonna beat Man City. But like, I don't know. It's probably just blind faith as a Newcastle fan, just going into every game hoping that we win. But yeah, I've got to try find some hope from somewhere. I've got to find some reason to want to watch this game. So yeah, I'm giving myself a little bit of belief through the fact that this is just classic Newcastle, where we will, as I say, lose to West Ham, lose to Brentford, and then go and somehow beat Man City when we're never expected to do it. So with that said, obviously get your predictions in for the giveaway for the pink shirt. I want your score prediction and first goal scorer as a reply to the pinned comment for Newcastle versus Manchester City. And thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.